G'day guys and welcome to Ask a Pathfinder's Month of Horror, where we talk about all things grisly, gruesome and macabre regarding our tabletop role-playing games. Today we are going to be talking about Gothic and Hunted type horror genres, and of course if you're not really into horror, do stick around because we do have some narrative tricks for games that aren't dedicated to the horror genre. This being said, however, there are some mature contents within this video, so viewer discretion is definitely advised. Alright guys, so first and foremost, what is Gothic horror? Well, Gothic horror is horror where your civilization is under siege or imperiled by the idea or concept of the wild. This supernatural, mysterious, unknown space that threatens your way of life. Now, back in the day, a lot of tales and a lot of folklore came from the ideas of teaching lessons. And one of those lessons, very firmly, was do not go into the wilds. Do not wander into the wilderness, for there are things there beyond our comprehension that risk taking us and devouring us. These are the tales that became the essence of Gothic horror. Tales like Bram Stoker's Dracula was inspired by these kind of stories about predatory creatures leaving their the wilds, or in this case Transylvania, this quiet little middle European country, and making their way to the more civilized places such as London, and making their mark on the world in an unrelenting and unstoppable way. This is the essence of Gothic, and this is the essence that we try to capture when we are creating a narrative within the Gothic genre. There are two real ways one can approach Gothic horror when you're looking at your tabletop role-playing game. The first is by having the wild interact with your community or your safe haven. Now, your safe haven is basically a place that your players will find is immune to the dangers of their travels. It is very important to establish this because if the players don't feel safe, if the players are suspicious, or if they're on edge in this particular area, you're going to lose a lot of your impact. So make sure you take time to just sort of have those quieter moments, have those slice of life scenes where your players talk to the baker or go to the greengrocer or are approached by a very grateful client. Whatever the case may be, just build up a familiarity and safety within this place so you can ruin it. So, bringing in something savage. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be a person. It could be a creature. It could be a natural event. It could be something mysterious and undefined. Whatever the case may be, this thing needs to disrupt their sense of stability and their sense of security. My personal favorite has always been an archetype called the wolf in sheep's clothing. There is no danger greater than the one that is delivered by someone close to you. You have no idea where the threat might come from. One of the best examples of this, in my opinion, was in fact in the real life encounter of Jack the Ripper. Now, Jack the Ripper was a real story about a serial killer who patrolled the streets of London, murdering prostitutes in quite large numbers, and never got caught. He was an enigma, a shadow that went unchecked for a great period of time before he simply vanished into obscurity. Well, him the person, not him the killer, because yeah, he's still quite well known. But that idea that this person walked around the streets at night murdering people, but then walked around the day among us, among the people of the streets, and was no different to anyone else. This is what we call the wolf in sheep's clothing, where one just blends in even though they have that kind of predatory instinct. The second type is when you leave the safety of your safe haven and you head out into the wilderness. Now, this is a common occurrence for many adventurers because adventurers do, in fact, leave their town to go on adventures. That's the whole nature of it. But once they hit the wilderness, once they hit the wild, you'll find a lot of them will do basic things to try and ensure their safety. They will set up a watch during camp. They will stick to the main roads, etc., etc., etc. to really explore the Gothic horror side of it, you need to take them off-road. You need to take them into the place where they don't know up or down or left or right. The place where you are stepping into the uncharted. There is no certainty about your journey. And that's where you'll start to be able to prey upon a lot of the Gothic themes. A great example to lean back into when you want to remember that, Gothic type tales that are set in the wilderness is Hansel and Gretel. I think Hansel and Gretel is a fantastic story for this kind of game because it was about two kids getting left in the wilderness to fend for themselves. They came across a gingerbread cottage that was run by a witch who tried to eat them. In the same vein, you can have your players step into the wild and approached by some sort of supernatural creature that maybe presents them with the opportunity of returning to civility, of returning to a safe haven. Another great story in Japanese culture is the story of the Yuki-onna, which is, I think, translated to the white woman or the snow woman, where she would lure travelers up a mountain into a lodge when they were cold and then would set about haunting and killing them. These tales, these stories of the wilderness and the safe haven, these are examples of where you want to step and what you want to pitch when you are playing your Gothic horror adventure. Now, when you are deciding what kind of villain you want to play for your Gothic game, you need to decide well, because are you fighting an environmental hazard? Are you fighting something supernatural like a ghost or a vampire or a werewolf? Or are you finding a predator among your civilization? This is where we step from the Gothic tales into the hunted tales, or the stalker or the slayers. Now, these two genres go hand in hand. They work so damn well, but they can work individually, which is why they're separate. You can have a Gothic horror centered around the idea of a winter that never ceases, and the people begin to go savage, basically. They begin to, become desperate in their times when they're hungry and thirsty, and the weather's not letting up. This is still a Gothic adventure. However, hunted requires a very specific formula. There is a predator, and there is prey. It is just about determining who is what. And the hunted aspect of the story plays well into the Gothic wilds because, predators are something that humankind has sort of fallen back on. We don't really have predators anymore. You don't go to the shop and worry about a giant saber-toothed cat coming out of the bushes to tear you apart. Not to say that there aren't predators, but humans have become an apex predator in their own way. The hunted archetype of RPGs is about reminding them that in a fantasy world, sentient creatures are not the top of the food chain, and that there are things out there that are just out to get them. Whether it's a creature that is looking for its next meal, or whether it's a serial killer with a very meticulous method of selecting and slaying victims. This is the dynamic between the predator and prey. There is the anticipation, the foreshadowing, and then finally the strike. And that's the important thing to build up. The foreshadowing is the first thing you want to do. You want to establish some base understanding of your target, your predator. This could be learning about animal attacks within the area, strange, unusual markings on certain corpses that have washed up on the shores. Whatever the case may be, it is simply a lead-in to something that is going to happen. The second step is anticipation, where you want to build and you want to create and you want to develop that ambience. Now, I liken it to kind of that whole maturing of flavor, maturing of age. The longer you take building up that anticipation, the better it'll taste when you eventually get to the strike, when that creature attacks. The problem is you want to avoid taking too long with it. If you draw it out for too long, then your players kind of, pass it off. They're just not really too interested in it. And then finally the strike, that moment where the predator has pounced and either the players are ready for the ensuing carnage or they're not. So when we talk about hunted games, there are three types of hunted games you can play. There is the Predator versus the PCs. There is the Predators versus NPCs, and my all-time favorite is the players, or the PCs, are hunting down a creature which they do not know yet is a predator. Now, all three are easy ways to go about, running your game. It's very simple to kind of go through it because, well, if the predator is hunting you, then, well, it is about setting it towards you. If the predator is hunting the NPCs, then it is about you using that NPC to convey their fear to your players. The last one, however, is very tricky because you need to balance up the investigation of the hunt together with the actual, mystery of what it is. You don't want to reveal that the players are on the trail of something dangerous until the point where it's too late. Otherwise, they might turn around and go, you know what? I think we're tracking a Tyrannosaurus Rex. We've been following these dung patches for a while, and there's been meat in it, and they've been huge. But these footprints, yeah, these are T-Rex tracks. Why are we chasing a T-Rex? To hell with that. Let's go find a druid and get him to deal with it. You kind of want to keep that mystery, that air of it. Like, so there's a large reptile seen in the area. Ooh, maybe it's a dragon. Actually, it's not quite a dragon because it's not flying. Oh, okay, well, it ate a cow, ripped it in half with a single bite. Jesus. A crocodile, maybe? Those little bits of investigation are what make a hunted game unique. So, like I said, with the Gothic game being about the wilderness versus the civilization theme, the hunted games are all about figuring out how to track and how to hunt, where to find their lair, what their eating patterns are, where they're going to move, how they're going to behave. It's about predicting your quarry. And that is how that works, not just with creatures, but with NPCs as well. So let's take the serial killer. By the way, for those of you who play Pathfinder, in the, I want to say the Adventurers, no, not the Adventurers Guide, Ultimate Intrigue, there is the Vigilante class. There is also an archetype for the Vigilante called the Serial Killer, which leaves calling cards and stuff like that. It's a very cool archetype, and if you get the chance to, definitely check it out. But we have a serial killer. This serial killer is called the Butterfly Killer. He always kills prostitutes, and he tattoos them in the neck with the tattoo of a butterfly. Simple calling card, simple thing. So what we now see is a pattern, and we have our players follow this pattern and try to ambush this guy. They may set a trap. They may stalk the night. They might go and investigate during the day about the people in the area and where people were, find out alibis. The whole idea is about just basically finding more information before finally confronting the creature you're hunting. So yeah, that is the hunted aspect of horror game. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, there's tons and tons and tons of stuff to go through to each category, and sadly I don't have enough time to go through all the nuances of it. But to just quickly recap, if you want to play your Gothic game, remember, it is either the wilderness versus your civilization, where your something from the wild has come into your city, or something has left the city and gone into the wild. This could be a missing child, this could be your PCs going on their adventure, this could be a kidnapping and someone taken before going missing in the wilderness. There's always also a supernatural air about it, and a rather macabre sense of death that may linger within the stories being shared as rumors spread about whatever narrative thing you are working on. As for the hunted works in three aspects, which is, of course, something is hunting your players, something is hunting some NPCs, or your players are unwittingly hunting a predator. Now, these things here are best done by choosing a really strong and good villain. But this being said, always be careful, because unlike any other game, when you are dealing with a hunted type game, you don't want your players to get bored of chasing and, sort of confronting this individual. If they always confront the individual and always perish, or always kind of have to run away, you'll eventually find that your players will get bored of it and just not want to do it anymore. Alternatively, if your players are really powerful and they confront your creature straight up the bat and just murder them, then that's equally as bad because you haven't really dragged it out as long as you may have wanted to. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for hanging out. If you want to hang out more and come chat with me, head on over to our Discord channel. I do try and keep there as often as possible. It's not very lively, but at the same time, anytime you ask a question, you can be sure that you will get an answer from me. The address is www.discord.me/AskAPathfinder. And if you want to check out some really cool articles, then head on over to our Facebook page at facebook.com/AskAPathfinder. And if you want to support us and become one of our cheeky patrons for as little as $1 a month, then head on over to our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/AskAPathfinder. There's tons of really cool rewards, including one-on-one chat sessions. I've even got a $60 a month reward where you get to play a weekly game at 8 p.m. Sunday US EST. We're going to be running the Price of Greed 3 parts module, but we're going to be using 2E, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We are starting this week, actually, so tonight or tomorrow, depending on when you're watching. Thank you very much, guys, again for watching. Until next time, make sure that you keep your dice rolling and make sure your ideas stay mindworm free. Have a good one, guys.